where best friends and next-door neighbors, Willow and Lillian, spill the tea on murder, mysteries, and other things that go bump in the night. So get your favorite teacup ready, and let's get into it. Welcome to Cruelty Podcast. This is Lillian. With me is Willow.
Hello.
We have a new theme this month.
We sure do.
Tell them what it is.
It is serial killers who haven't been caught.
Yes, so we'll have lists of suspects, but there's no answer to any of these cases.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important, you know, if you have any kind of platform, to try and bring attention to cases that are active and unsolved, and even cold cases. So I hope, I don't know. I feel like it's like a long shot, but wouldn't that be cool? It would be cool.
This case is active and unsolved, and I think a lot of people who know this case, and especially, you know, once we get towards the end of the episode, we might have an idea of who we think it is. A lot of people believe they know who did this, but still not convicted, so we'll see.
Why don't you slap a trigger warning on there?
So, trigger warning for sexual assault, sex work, and drug use. And I say sex work because we are pro-ho on this podcast.
That's right.
And
Sex work is work.
Absolutely. It's harder work than most of us do ever.
As a former sex worker, I mean, I don't agree that it's like harder work. I think it's smarter work.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. But it is dangerous work at times.
Exactly.
And I wish it wasn't. Yeah. I wish it was regulated just like regular jobs.
Right.
And that we could keep our sex workers safe, because why wouldn't we? Mm-hmm. To me, if you're selling your body for sex, I don't see it any different than going up to McDonald's and frying fries. Or going to an office. You're still using your body and your time.
Mm-hmm. Still using my hands in a way I don't want to.
Sorry. I wasn't laughing. I just God choked me, I guess. Which, fair, fine. So that's my cue to shut up. Let's talk about this case.
So something that I really don't like in true crime communities, and especially with like police task force, they consider sex workers to be what's called the invisible victim, and I really fucking hate that slogan.
Like, I get why they're saying that.
Yes,
but
they lean into it as a rhyme and reason as to why they don't look into these cases.
Exactly. If they're like, hey, these are invisible victims because society pushes them to the outside.
Yeah, and maybe let's highlight them.
Yes, they don't do that, though.
Exactly.
They're like, well, there were sex workers. So what do you think was going to happen?
And they aid into the identity of the invisible victim.
Yes, and so I think we should stop calling them that.
Absolutely.
Not just victim. Victim does the job, you know?
Right.
Just makes me mad.
Yeah. And, you know, we all know it's rough enough out there for femme, non-binary presenting people to just walk down the street without being sexually assaulted, abducted, or murdered.
And trans women, too.
Yes, that's included in femme people.
Okay, cool. I'm just making sure we get them. We include them.
Right. And I say women throughout this episode just to condense it down, because all of the victims in this case are cis women. But when I say women...
We know what you mean.
We know it's an all-inclusive term.
Trans women, too.
Absolutely. Trans women are women. Of course. That's, yeah. But sex workers in particular are 60 to 100 times more likely to be murdered than any other femme-presenting person on the street, especially Black, brown, and indigenous people, sex workers. And not just because of their availability, which a lot of people like to rely heavily on the fact that they are available. They are right there in public view, able to be reached. And a lot of people like to point at, you know, the possibility that maybe this is, you know, a race thing, a gender thing, you know, a profiling thing. But mostly it's because the police are less likely to actually give a shit about sex workers. And this is sadly a tale as old as time. You know, this is essentially the very first profession of mankind. Literally the very first job that we've ever had.
I mean, that's not true. It is an old wives' tale.
Really?
No, it's not true at all.
Oh. I've just always stuck by that.
we don't know what the very first profession was.
I guess that's understood.
We don't. And in recorded history, that's not the first recorded profession. However, as long as we've had trade, barter, or money, it's been around.
Yeah.
It's been around. I would say it's as old as any other profession under the sun.
Right.
I just see that a lot, and I've actually done a lot of research into the history of sex work, and maybe I'll do a Maris Monday on it.
You
should. One of these days.
You really, really should, because I think that it's important information. And I don't know, I never looked into that claim just because I liked it.
I like it too, but I look into it because I did have some
ding
dong on the internet and argue with me before. So I was like, maybe I am wrong. And the answer is, But as long as there have been sex workers, have been people willing to pay for and exploit their services, but have been unwilling to ensure their safety and give a shit about them when something bad happens like this.
Exactly.
That makes me mad.
Exactly. And they are just notoriously and disproportionately target for violence.
Yeah. Because people know no one cares.
And there's also the vulnerability aspect.
Yeah.
You know, you're able to get them alone in a room naked. You know,
exactly.
So they're vulnerable. But they take advantage of that. And typically the police are, no help for the matter. The overwhelming majority of homicides against sex workers go unsolved or even undocumented. Most cases never fully open. Leads are completely forgotten or blown off. And many of those left alive working the streets fall victim to not just perpetrators on the street, but also police brutality on top of all the violent situations in their day-to-day life. And most sex workers don't feel safe talking to police because of this. And it's even more unlikely that the cases get solved because they don't feel safe coming forward with information.
No.
Because most of the time when sex workers go forward for sexual assault allegations, they do not meet certain requirements and are not eligible
Yeah, listen to that.
to report charges of sexual violence and rape due to their profession.
Cool.
They aren't eligible.
What does that fucking mean? See? All right, I'll leave it alone. Because, look, I don't need to soapbox if y'all been even listening for 5 minutes.
When they do go in to report these sexual assaults, they're usually taken to jail. Yeah. Because of the petty crimes that are involved in their day-to-day life.
Yeah.
So
why would you talk to the fucking police?
Why would you ever fucking talk to the police?
You wouldn't.
Because also, a lot of the times, the police are not just physically assaulting these victims.
Oh, I know. I have stories.
Exactly.
From friends, former
Exactly.
friends, yeah.
So, yeah, this is pretty much exactly how the case for tonight goes. Now, the West Mesa, it's called the West Mesa Murders or the West Mesa Bone Collector. The West Mesa, as far as landscape is concerned, is a very mountainous, dry desert in between Albuquerque and the Rio Grande, essentially stretching across most of New Mexico. It's known for their scattered mesas, which are really steep, flat mountains. Have you ever seen this geography before?
I have. I've been to Arizona.
I've been to Albuquerque, and that's where this case takes place. And I
love Albuquerque.
I've had to drive through that desert, and it's otherworldly.
It is. Arizona and New Mexico are some of the most beautiful scenery I've ever laid eyes on.
Mm-hmm. And I had no idea what a mesa was until I saw it, and I was like, that's a mesa.
That's why they call.
Now I know.
That's why it's from this the Spanish word for table.
Because
it looks like a fucking table.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're really cool.
Yeah, and it's the same type of similar. I'm not a geologist, but it looks like the same type of red rocks that you see in southern Colorado. I believe it's still part of the same rock formation kind of system, but yeah, it's just absolutely beautiful. It's a very dry desert climate, and most people don't really inhabit this area. Like it's just like mostly just desert, and then occasionally there's a big city, but there's not a lot of activity in between the cities.
No, there's really fucking
barren land. Absolutely.
A lot, not very much light pollution, so I would go out there and look up at the stars,
take pictures of the Milky Way.
Well, I didn't have a camera, but I just went there to look.
Yeah, you can go look too. I'm always looking for photo opportunities, of course, but Albuquerque itself, it's a huge city now, but in the 90s and early 2000s, it was still largely developing. dry, open desert landscape stretches on either side of the city as far as the eye can see, and the desert outskirts of Albuquerque are now mostly home to like housing developments. So it kind of like works like from the inside out. You know, you have the big city on the inside, and then as you get into the outskirts, that's where all of the neighborhoods are and the families live, and then past that there's nothing. It's just desert. The early part of the 2000s, between 2001 and 2005, brought with it a string of missing sex workers from Central Avenue in what is called the war zone. Basically, Albuquerque's version of Skid Row / the red light district. Now, this is where you'll find drugs and sex for sale and crime just running rampant. And police tend to avoid this part of town like the plague. In 2006, Detective Ida Lopez had just returned back from work for a medical leave. She had a surgery, and so she was put on the missing persons unit kind of as light work, as like, you know, desk work, stuff that she could do that, you know, because she wasn't physically fit to, you know, go on patrol and, you know, do harder activities. So what was meant to be light work became her life's work. Like, Ida Lopez delved so hard into these missing persons cases, she became part of the culture of the women of the streets of Albuquerque. And these weren't just sex workers to her. By the time she got into the investigation, she considered all of them her girls. And both the women alive on the streets that she was meeting, she would, you know, go throughout the streets. She would meet people. She would, you know, try to gather information for her research. And in meeting them and asking questions, she fell in love. You know, she loved these women, each and every single one of them, alive and dead, like, or missing at this point. You know, all the girls on her missing persons list that grew day by day. I mean, this list just got longer and longer and longer the more people she met. And she loved them wholeheartedly. She became close with the victims' families. She kept in constant contact with them over the years. Throughout the investigation and even long after her retirement, those girls and their families were her families. Like, those were her girls. And those were those girls' families. So those girls' families became her families. Like, she became so intertwined with these women that it was hard to separate them, you know? She would call their families all the time. She would keep up with them. She celebrated birthdays, anniversaries, and watched these victims' children who they had, you know, tragically left behind. She watched their children grow up. She looked after them. Like, those were her girls, and they were her main priority. She developed a very lengthy and detailed list of mostly Latino women who went missing from Central Avenue area. By 2007, Detective Lopez had a list of over 17 women from 2001 to 2006 who had gone missing from the area. All had similar backgrounds in street life, drugs, and sex work, all similar circumstances in which they had gone missing. She just knew that they were dealing with a serial killer. Like, anybody looking at that information would think, okay, you have a serial killer on your hands.
And I am familiar with this case.
Yeah. I mean, I've been on and off researching this case for years. I don't say I love this case, but
this one fascinates me just like the Texas killing fields.
Yes, me too. Yes, I'm really into the Texas killing fields as well because I like closure. And these cases don't have closure.
I just feel when I see things like unnamed victims or like I know it was a sex worker or somebody struggling with addiction and just there's no movement on the case, I just get really sad because that was somebody to somebody. And even if, you know, a person has value, even if they don't have value to anyone else but themselves.
I don't give a fuck what you ingest into your body.
No.
I don't give a fuck what you put into your body, take out of your body. Like, I don't care.
You're still a human being.
You're a human being. You deserve food, love, shelter, a fucking hug every now and then if you want it. And people should love you regardless.
Dignity and respect should be offered to every human being on this earth just for being alive.
Yeah.
And
that even means those murderers in prison.
Yes. And I know people, look, I've gotten a lot of flack for having empathy for murderers, But if we don't, we can't have empathy for everyone, and we can't get better. We can't stop the cycles of abuse. And I think with the whole reason we do this podcast is to try and understand why this even happens.
Right.
And in doing that, I've had to try and empathize with people who others consider monsters.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know what, folks? That is how you catch them.
Yes.
If you empathize, then they're a real person.
Yes.
Then you can find out where they really are and who they really are.
They're not separate from you.
No.
We
all have
human.
that evil in us. We're all capable. We're all capable. So that's, I don't know. Get off this. I can't.
I know. This is a really hard one too because it's so connected to our hearts. Like, yeah.
It's when I went into podcasting, these are the type of cases that I have always gravitated towards because I feel like when I would listen to other content creators or documentaries, the way these women were talked about is just so disposable and a lot of times not even being named. It was just gross to me. Yeah,
and they're left with like a few words to describe them. Oh, they were a sex worker on drugs and they were murdered. That's it. That's
brown
all you
girl,
get.
I don't know.
Exactly.
That's how it feels like.
Exactly.
And I thought if that is my child or me,
is
that how I want to be? Is that my legacy?
Right?
You're not even going to give me the dignity of like talking about me or my name. It's gross. I don't like it.
But yeah, Detective Lopez really tried to fight for these women. She, no matter how loud she got, no matter how much she fought, no matter how much she kicked and screamed, no one would admit that they had a serial killer on their hands. Nobody fucking cared. The department just would not acknowledge the links between the missing persons cases and refused to even consider the term serial killer until February 2nd, 2009. A woman was walking her dog in her neighborhood. She lived on the outskirts of the city where there had been a neighborhood development project in the works, but during the 2008 housing market crash, the development stopped completely, leaving houses that were finished up for sale for dirt cheap, and then the rest of the plots that were zoned for potential houses to be built, those empty plots just were left bare and unfinished, and it was kind of like a barren wasteland at that point, like just with, freckled houses here and there. Now, it was in a vacant lot near her house that her dog excitedly ran off the trail a bit and came back with a large bone. And, in any true crime case, this is always the turning point.
Yeah, it always is. You guys would be just shocked at how many cases I read where the dog finds human remains.
I don't wish we had a tally, but you know what I mean?
We've at least had a few that we've covered.
More than a couple handfuls, for sure. Now, this dog came back with this large bone, and she was like, this is the desert, but that doesn't look animal. So she calls her sister, who is a nurse, and she sends a photo to her sister, and her sister confirms that that is a human femur bone. And so, of course, right away she called police, and little did any of them know that this bone would open up one of the biggest investigations that area had ever seen. This was a mass grave.
Oh, Lord.
Now, the recovery of evidence from what was later dubbed the pit was an extensive project, to say the least. As soon as they began searching the area where the femur bone was found, more and more bones were found, indicating several remains. They put up a grid and got to work, carefully removing bone by bone and piecing each individual victim back together in a lab. This was painstaking work. This part of the investigation took years, and rightly so. They had to pay very close attention to every detail and chart every little thing that they found. Now, I don't know, how much you or most listeners know about this type of investigative work, but when I say it is tedious, Oh my God, is it tedious?
Oh yeah.
Like they have to put up the strings,
The grids,
the grid strings, like foot by foot.
They go like archaeologists
Yes,
do with
yes.
like the little screens,
Yes,
straining
absolutely.
all the dirt.
Yeah. I'm really big into archaeology. That was one of like my main fixations as a child, and so I've watched countless archaeological digs and things like that. But that's exactly what they do, and then they have to go back and chart it, you know, on a sheet to say which part on the grid that they found which remains, and you know, again, very, very tedious work. And they started to realize that, you know, over the years of detailing all these remains, they were just skeletonized remains. There were no personal belongings, no clothing, no indicators at all whatsoever. No personal belongings at all. All of these victims were left there buried naked. So where their personal belongings went, we have no idea. They have never been recovered. And all the bones that had been found, now they had been in the desert for years. They had been buried in the desert for many, many years. And with that comes, you know, large amounts of seasonal rain mixed with, you know, the majority of the year in extreme heat. Now, heat degradation is a really big issue when you're trying to recover these remains and get a positive identification on them. And it wasn't just hard for for scientists to extract their DNA from these remains. Now, most of these victims were identified through dental records, but it was absolutely impossible to get any sort of DNA recovery from the suspect. I mean, there was just no way. Now, Albuquerque PD set up the 118th Street Task Force, which was named after the street that was close by the burial site. The task force was extensive. It included officers from state and local police department, FBI agents, state medical examiners, and district attorneys. They brought in full search team, ground penetrating radar, cadaver dogs. They had officers in aircraft performing flyovers to see if they could find any fresh disturbed ground throughout the mesas and surrounding areas that could potentially point to an additional burial site. They even brought in archaeologists, mediums, psychics, and an astrologer.
Oh, yeah, I remember this shit.
They brought in an astrologer because they thought, I mean, now I do have to give them credit for this because it's not like they just brought in an astrologer. They brought in every single person.
They were throwing everything at the wall.
Literally, so I got to commend them for that. But they were even looking into astrology, like the placements of the constellations over the burial site.
Yeah.
Mixed with like all these other aspects of like natal charts and shit. Like, that's pretty far reaching, but
and you all know I love me some woo, but
I love I love astrology. I love astrology.
It's fun.
But I am not going to use it for everything.
No.
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 But, you know, good on them, I guess. Now, during the ground penetrating radar search of the area, they did stumble across another burial site. But these bones were ancient. This was a native burial site. So, yeah, they ended up taking some of the bones back to the lab, like essentially carbon dating them, realizing that they were not right. And I hope they put those bones back.
Put the bones back, please.
Please put the bones back.
Yeah. Y'all not seen Poltergeist?
Yeah,
no?
Put it
them
back.
back.
Now, one piece of the investigation that was extremely helpful was the satellite footage of the area. Now, have you seen this?
Yes.
This is fucking fascinating, and it creeps me out. Like, it makes my skin absolutely crawl. So it shows, you know, like on the timeline prior to when they think that these victims went missing and were killed. Now, it shows like this wide open area. There's nothing at all. It's literally just flat desert land. And then you get into the timeline of like when the victims...
You can start seeing the actual graves.
You can see the tire tracks, fresh tire tracks, the day the first victim is proposed to be missing, and then the fresh grave. right next to where the tire tracks stop.
Oh, that's so creepy.
So fucked, dude. So fucked. And it's like part of the thing that makes it even bad is that even worse is that, you know, you're able to see this in clear, you know,
but they're not seeing the car, and they're not seeing the
car. They're not seeing the person because it is satellite footage. But you're able to see the day or the day after or whatever. You're able to see the exact time when these bodies were dumped, but years later. There's nothing you can do about it. You're seeing it like,
oh, that sucks.
You know what I mean? That's kind of like the part that really gets me. Is like you kind of just want to reach through the screen and grab them, but you can't because it's years ago.
Yeah.
Detective Ida Lopez worked tirelessly to solve this case of her missing girls, but sadly was unable to have any type of closure by the time that she retired in 2014. But her retirement didn't last long. In 2015, they called her back to the case because of her extensive knowledge and research into each of the victims' daily lives and backgrounds. Albuquerque's police spokesman, Tanner Tixier, is quoted as saying, quote, "Her complete depth of knowledge of this case is not something that can just be passed along to the next detective who takes over the case. You can look at the case file and try to get a good grasp of it, but unless you were there from day one, you're not going to have the intimate knowledge of the case that Ida would have." One of the victim's mothers later said, quote, "She put her whole heart into it. That was her looking for her own kids when it's our kids. When they found them, she cried with them too." The investigators brought out Ida's list, and one by one, her girls matched the DNA from the remains found in the pit. It is almost her entire list.
Oh my God.
I know.
It gives you the chills.
I got full body chills and I almost started crying. And oh God, it's really rough. I really love this woman. Ida Lopez. My goodness. What a girl.
What an actual hero, you know?
Seriously. Now, these are the victims and these are their stories. The first of the remains that were found at the site were confirmed to be 26-year-old Victoria Chavez. She was last seen by her family in 2003. She wasn't reported missing until 2005. She, like many others, had lived a hard life. She had multiple arrest records for prostitution and drug-related offenses, but nearing her disappearance, it seems that she had been trying to turn her life around. She had gotten a job at a restaurant, had acquired housing, and was even considering going back to school to become a nurse. But sadly, that opportunity was taken from her. I don't know why. I just feel so serendipitously strange about the fact that it was her femur bone that was found by the dog, and it was a nurse that confirmed it was human.
And then she wanted to be a nurse.
She wanted to be a nurse.
It's pitiful.
The medical examiner determined that her death likely took place at some point in 2004. Gina Michelle Valdez, age 22, was next. She went by Michelle. She had 2 sisters and was described by her mother to be fun-loving and always smiling. Teenage years were rough on Michelle, and she became very rebellious. She had 2 children very young and soon fell into drugs and sex work. Though she couldn't take care of her children, she still checked in on them as much as possible and remained a constant in their life. Regardless of her own struggles, she was a good mother and cared for her children and her family. She was known to go through periods of time with little contact, though, which is, completely understandable given her circumstances. But she always came back around to check in and ask for money, which her family gladly gave her money anytime she would ask for it. They knew that she would probably use it on drugs, but they didn't care because once that money was spent, she was likely to come back. And it was her act of coming back and them getting to see her again that made it worth it. Which I know a lot of people have issues with giving drug addicts money, thinking that you're just supplying them with drugs. But the truth is, no.
Well, I mean, sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes, yeah, but that is their decision. And whenever you give them money, you are giving them help. And it is on them on how they spend it.
Well, as somebody who lived with somebody who, I lived with her obviously before, but my mother died when she was in active addiction. And I do believe what killed her is that she cashed in her 401k.
Right.
And it allowed her to buy more drugs and more alcohol than she'd had access to in years. And I do believe that if you have a family member, the last thing you should get who's has troubles with addiction, the last thing you should give them is money. Give them food.
Well, here's the thing.
Give them clothes.
Is that when I think that it's kind of a situational type
Yeah, it sure is.
thing.
I
don't think that's a blanket statement because,
No.
Especially in her case, it's that, you know, if they didn't give her money, she would go get it somewhere else.
Oh, yeah. I just, I always believe that with addiction, it's kind of I don't believe in cutting people off because they're addicted. I believe in kind of a soft cutting off. You have to love them from a little bit of a distance. I don't believe in enabling because they have to know to get help. It can't just always be okay. But I do think it's a case-by-case basis, an individual basis, and I just don't like blanket statements for any situation.
Right. I just don't like people getting on to her parents.
No.
Or having any type of ill will towards her parents.
Well, here's the thing. If people who do that, do you have a child with addiction?
Exactly.
You refuse your child who's hungry.
Exactly.
And see how well that goes. And yeah, maybe she did lie to her parents and use it for drugs, but you know what? They're her parents. What are they supposed to fucking do? Now, I don't like blaming the parents when they had nothing to do with what happened. Absolutely not.
Absolutely. I will say this while we're on the topic. Recently, I had totally forgotten about this, but recently I was visiting with my adoptive father, and he told me a story about in my early 20s. I was homeless, and he had given me $10 to go inside and put gas in my car. Well, on the way into the gas station, I think it was $20. I took that $20 bill and I gave it to the people standing outside of the gas station asking for money instead of putting it in my car. I didn't think about it. I didn't remember after I did it. I didn't remember until 11 years later, like a few weeks ago when my dad told me the story, but he was like, he got mad at me. He was like, why would you do that? They're just going to go use that money on drugs.
I don't care what they
And I said, I don't care. Yeah. Exactly. Why would that have anything to do with me? Those people needed help. They said that they needed money to get help. I gave them money to get help. There's no issue there. And that's just how I think that people should live.
I've always thought so. I've never, you see somebody homeless and, you got a little to spare. Yeah, do it. Or go buy them some food. Or, ask
anything.
Them, why don't you, my big thing is what I have always done for homeless people. I say, what do you need?
Exactly.
Hey, brother, what do you need?
Yes.
And then go get them what you need. They need if you can spare it. If you're so worried about drug use.
Yeah.
And you know what I really irritates me because when I was homeless, of course, I knew a lot of homeless people.
Absolutely.
These people are self-medicating some pretty bad mental health issues.
That's the thing. And I think that's what I, tried to reiterate to my adopted father is that hey, I don't know where they're at, but I know where I'm at. And I know that sometimes a saving grace is a little bit of numbness to get me through the day. I know that that's not a gospel, that's not something good you should tell everybody to do.
We're already in a bad situation, again, and it's not going to be made better by my judgment.
Exactly.
So I'm going to reserve it.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm sorry I went on a little tangent about that. I just really felt for her parents.
Yeah.
And, I'm sure they received more backlash than we know for that. And they loved her. They loved her and she loved them. I don't think that it should extend any further than that.
It doesn't.
But, at one point in 2004, she lost contact and they never heard from her again. And this, of course, was not like her. Her father officially reported her missing in February of 2005. When her remains were found, a 4-month-old fetus was found inside.
Oh, God.
It is unclear if Michelle knew she was pregnant. People who were close to her had no idea. Being 4 months pregnant.
You ain't showing then. I wasn't.
I did, girl. But,
I didn't.
Yeah. So it's likely that she didn't know. But still. Now, something to note is that Michelle's mother and sister had reported hearing rumors that Michelle had been stabbed and dumped in the West Mesa area. Shortly after she went missing, they heard these rumors. And they reported it. But the lead was never looked into or even considered until her remains were identified.
Ridiculous.
Julie Nato, age 24, was found next. She was born to a single mother and had a sister named Valerie. Her family was pretty tight-knit, being those three women. The two sisters were extremely close. When Julie was a teenager, she became pregnant and gave birth to a child that she absolutely adored. Her life revolved around that baby until she was about 19 years old, when she tried drugs for the first time, and from there, her life was taken over. She got into sex work as means to make ends meet and feed her addiction, and she was arrested on multiple occasions for prostitution. She was last seen in August of 2004 and was soon reported missing. Sadly, her sister Valerie was unable to cope with the loss of her sister, and in numbing her pain, she died of an overdose in 2006.
God, I hate that.
So that mama lost both of her daughters.
I can't even fucking imagine.
Cinnamon Elks was a 32-year-old mother of two who she loved her children so deeply and her family so deeply. But due to her addictions, she was unable to care for them as much as she would like. Her family would take care of them, and she would come around as often as she could, but there would be long periods of time where she just would disappear for weeks on end, which is a common theme.
Yeah, with people struggling,
and it's understandable.
With addiction. Yeah,
absolutely understandable. But she would always come back. She would always come back for her children, no matter what. She also received several charges over the years for prostitution and drug-related offenses, which I state that a lot of these women did acquire charges of that sort. And I just state it because, not that it matters to me, but I think it mattered to the case as far as what the other investigating officers were likely to look at.
Mm-hmm. And I want to say, like, those charges, I don't think those things should be illegal. So
Absolutely not.
We shouldn't punish addicts. We should help them.
Yeah.
Punishing them isn't working, is it?
Why is it illegal to ingest something?
It shouldn't be.
Fuck you.
Oh, absolutely.
It's also illegal to try to kill yourself. Again, fuck you. I govern my own body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, don't get me on that soapbox today.
So she was arrested in 2004, and after she was released, she was never seen again. Her mother tried to file a missing persons report a month after her release, and no sign of her. But the official report wasn't filed until several months later.
Bullshit.
Like many cases that we've covered on this podcast, police told Cinnamon's mother that adults are allowed to go missing.
Yeah, sure they are, but at least, here's my thing, at least look into it.
Look
into it.
Yeah. There are so many.
They are allowed to go missing.
There are so many instances where an adult goes missing. They look for that adult. They find that adult. And then they say, oh, you're found. Someone was looking for you. Do you want to be found? No? Okay.
I will let them know that you do not wish to have contact. Thank you very much. That's how easy that shit is.
Yes. There's a case that I want to cover for Patreon at some point where that happens. I'll tell you off mic because I don't want to give it too much away. But yeah, it happens all the time. And so why not apply it? I mean, it's just lazy.
Yeah, it is.
It's just lazy.
It's gross.
They don't care.
No.
But her mother knew something happened to her daughter because, again, this is like so many cases, and this is when like your stomach kind of drops. Her mother didn't receive a phone call on her birthday.
Yeah.
And that's when you know that you know that you know that you know.
Exactly.
Just before Cinnamon went missing, she actually told some of her close friends that she had heard that there was a quote-unquote dirty cop that had been going around killing sex workers, chopping off their heads, and dumping their bodies in the West Mesa. And the women going missing all around her were her friends.
That's so scary. I can't
These
imagine.
were her friends. One by one going missing, and she's like trying to get anybody to listen. She's like, look, there is a serial killer killing us. They're killing my friends, and she's scared that she's next. And all of her friends said later on that, you know, leading up to her disappearance, she was scared, she was uneasy, she was anxious, she was literally terrified that she was going to be the next victim, and she was. She was. And there was nothing anybody could do about it because there was nothing police would do about it. After she went missing, Cinnamon's mother received phone calls from an unknown person saying that her daughter had been murdered and dumped in the West Mesa. She tried to report this to police, but they did absolutely nothing about it again. Monica Candelaria, age 22, was found next. She grew up in Albuquerque. She was close to her family and was a young mother as well who had fallen into addiction and sex work. She was last seen in May of 2003 near Central Avenue. Her case was one of the only missing girls from Ida's list that had actually gone into an active investigation at the time that she went missing, but it only lasted a few months before it went cold. Monica's mother told police that she was given information that her daughter was murdered by a man that lived nearby named Isaac, and that she was dumped in the West Mesa, but this lead was never looked into. Veronica Romero, age 28. She was an only child and very close to her family. She had 5 children. Veronica also worked in the war zone with the other women and was last seen in February of 2004 on Central Avenue, getting into a white pickup truck and never seen again. She was reported missing shortly after that. Doreen Marquez, age 24. Like the women mentioned before, she was a young mother. She had 2 little girls that she absolutely adored. Doreen was funny, optimistic, charismatic, and loved to look good. She was said to always be exceptionally fashionable. She dressed well. She always had her hair and nails done. Her makeup was flawless. She had actually done really well for herself until her boyfriend went to jail. And when he left, she was left all alone without him. And with that came sadness, depression, and addiction. She got sucked into the street life and became a working girl on Central Avenue. Just like many of the others, this would lead to her going away for long periods of time without her family knowing where she was. And just like the other girls on this list, this made it hard to get an exact time and date that she went missing. It's believed that she went missing sometime in 2004, but her family hadn't seen her since late 2003. She wasn't officially reported missing until December of 2004. 15-year-old Solania Edwards. Unlike most of the other girls, Solania wasn't from Albuquerque area. She had actually grown up in Texas. She was one of 8 children who later were put into foster care in Oklahoma. Solania ended up running away from her foster home and was later seen on Colfax Avenue in Aurora, Colorado, and was seen working with other sex workers alongside of her. Her alias at this time was Chocolate and Minnie. Oh, sorry, not Minnie. Mimi.
That's cute.
Yeah. She was one of the only women from this list that were African American, and again, she was only 15 years old. She was one of the youngest victims. Evelyn Salazar was 27 years old, and she went missing with her also 15-year-old cousin, Jamie Barella. Evelyn was a mother of 2. She was visiting family in March of 2004 when her and her cousin Jamie went for a walk to the park off San Mateo. Now, a lot of people think that this story between her and her cousin is kind of strange, kind of fishy. A lot of the investigators didn't really understand what was going on. We just got done with Thanksgiving. We all know what it means to go take a walk from a family gathering.
Yeah.
They're just going to the park. They're going to be back in an hour.
A lot of families, too, like, together and individually will go on a walk after a big meal.
That's true.
Not necessarily a fight, even.
That's true.
Just saying.
Yeah, but I mean, like, if it's me and it's my cousin at a family gather, we're walking off to go smoke some weed. Like,
yep.
You know, and she's 15.
My Thanksgiving, we just smoke weed on the deck.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? A lot of people are like, why are they going to the park? And now Evelyn, she's 27 years old. She was a sex worker. She frequented Central Avenue. But I don't think she was getting her 15-year-old cousin into sex work. I don't even think, I mean, this is personal, But I personally don't even think that she was trying to get her into hard drugs. They were probably sneaking away to smoke a bowl or smoke a cigarette or something. You know, you never know. I personally, again, I have no leg to stand on. I just think it was way more innocent than people want to paint.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people want to say that her 15-year-old cousin was in sex work as well.
I think it was Thanksgiving and they went off to smoke some cigarettes or some weed.
Right. It was March, but same thing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Now, like all the other women on Ida Lopez's list, like I said, Evelyn was a known sex worker in the area. A lot of her friends were on that list and worked on Central Avenue. And obviously, Jamie was not part of that group. So this confused investigators. And it's actually predominantly why Jamie, the 15-year-old cousin, wasn't identified until the very end. She was the very last victim to be identified. Like, her remains were found right next to her cousin. Her cousin was identified because of her connections with sex workers. But this 15-year-old was not. Just strictly due to the connections. I don't understand why they didn't see... They identified Evelyn. They knew that Jamie went missing the same time as Evelyn. Why didn't they just go ahead and test the remains? You can tell a skeletal remains of a 15-year-old next to a 27-year-old.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
I mean, not mine, probably.
I mean, you have to
No,
get
I'm
a
kidding.
specialist to look at the bones,
Yes.
like a forensic
Well,
pathologist.
that's what they
is
had.
it?
They had a
Yeah.
whole team of forensic pathologists for this case. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Why did Jamie's remains sit on the back burner until the very end? That just gets me. People don't really want to think clearly. They just want to like really write on their connections or what they think things are connected to. But either way, the two girls, like I said, were due back within the hour, and when they never came back, they were reported missing officially a few weeks later in April of 2004. And again, their skeletonized remains were found buried together. So at least, God. Virginia Cloven, age 24, was found next. She was funny, witty, charming, and apparently very truthful. Her dad said that she was like brutally unable to tell a lie, like it was painful, which I relate to that. I cannot lie to save my life. I'm really bad at it. It's not pretty or cute, and so I just don't do it.
The truth always hurts more, so I enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm just so upfront about everything. I think you don't have to question me at all. And she was one of those types of people. Now, sadly, her story is, it really gets to me. So when one of her brothers was shot and killed, Virginia broke down and couldn't take it. So she ran away from home to go live with her boyfriend. Now, soon after she ran away, one of her other brothers ran away as well. Now, tragically, not long after she moved in with her boyfriend was ran over by a car.
Oh my God.
And went into a coma and later on died. So her brother died.
Then her boyfriend
Boyfriend died. And now she's homeless.
It's terrible.
And beyond just being homeless, she's devastated. She's gutted.
Yeah, she's depressed, obviously.
I mean, I'm sure her whole soul is ripped out of her body at this point. You know what I mean? Her world is shattered. And now she has nowhere to go, and she turns to the streets. She didn't speak to her family much. Again, she ran away, but before she went missing, she did call her dad. She told him that everything was looking up.
Oh, baby.
She told him that she had fallen in love. She had met a wonderful man, and they were going to get married.
It's pitiful.
God, I'm sorry. But yeah, that day would never come for her. She was reported missing in October of 2004. Now, those were the 11 remains found. There are more on the list that are not found. And I'm going to go through their names and when they disappeared. I don't have a lot of information on them, but I think just circulating their names, if anybody is from the area, I know we have a lot of listeners in Albuquerque and the New Mexico area.
Yes, we do, as a matter of fact.
We really do. So if you guys are out there listening,
have any info
or family ties or anything, just keep an ear out. Darlene Trujillo disappeared in July of 2001. Martha Lucher disappeared September of 2003. Anna Vigil disappeared January of 2005. Felipe Gonzalez disappeared in April of 2005. Nina Herron disappeared in May of 2005. Jillian Hernandez Ortiz disappeared January 2006. Chantel Waits disappeared March of 2006. Leah Peebles disappeared in May of 2006. And Vanessa Reed disappeared of June 2006. The amount of horror and fear that must have echoed through the streets of Albuquerque during those years. You heard those dates. They are literally one after the next.
Yeah. And I'll tell you this, as somebody who was on the streets for a while, we talk.
Oh, word gets around.
We
the
talk.
second something happens. And people that aren't on the streets and people that haven't lived that lifestyle, they don't understand how interwoven and interconnected everyone is, because
you care about your neighbors, you know what I mean?
And your survival, fight or flight are constantly enacted. So you look out for one another. You are a team.
That's right. You have to be.
You're,
to watch each
all of your
backs.
eyes are connected. All of your ears are connected. All of your mouths are connected.
Because ain't nobody else looking out for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So this is like someone tormenting a family.
Yeah, pretty much.
And just picking off family members one by one.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here are some of the leads and suspects. I'm not going to get into all of them because there are a lot of suspects that made it to the suspect list. I mean, there are thousands and probably hundreds of thousands at this point, but there are a lot of people that cover this case want to talk about that were taken off the suspect list. Like one of the pimps that ran one of the escort services that a lot of the sex workers worked under, he was thrown under the bus in so many articles. So many people wanted to really write on him as a suspect because he was legitimately worried about his missing girls. They considered it suspicious because he was worried about them when they were just in the missing stage. And I'm like, even if he was a disgusting, terrible person, which he wasn't, there's a lot of business people that classify their sex workers as inventory. Let's just be honest. And so, of course, a pimp or their boss is going to be looking for them, right? But this man is above and beyond that. This man cared about his girls. He looked after them. He looked after their well-being, their safety. He loved them. He had intimate relationships, not just sexual, but also sexual with many of them. And I think it was those relationships that police thought that he was tied to them. But no, the community absolutely stood by this man, and he legitimately cared about them. So I'm not even going to say his name. But a few days after the discovery of the femur bone in the pit, Joseph Blia became one of the first suspects. Now, he is one of the main suspects that a lot of people like to point fingers at. His wife actually is the one that called in the tip. He was known as, quote, the middle school rapist for a series of sexual assaults committed on dozens of young girls who happened to live near the McKinley Middle School. He would stalk their home, enter silently in the night with a ski mask over his face, armed with a knife, and assault them in their own bedrooms before disappearing into the night, taking their underwear as a trophy.
Jesus.
And this is all throughout the 80s and I believe into the early 90s. His DNA was also linked to a homicide of a sex worker who was killed and dumped off Central Avenue in the 1980s. And so obviously he looks like a potential suspect based on his crimes, right? Now, during the time of the West Mesa murders, Joseph Blia worked for a landscaping company. And this particular landscaping company that he worked for, he would frequent a plant nursery that was located just right up the road from where the burial site was. Now, this specific plant nursery, there was next to one of the bodies or one of the remains, they found a sales tag that was from the specific plant nursery that he frequented multiple times a week.
This one's looking
right
better to me.
It was the only piece of evidence that was non-skeletal remains.
Yes.
And
I remember reading about that, and I've always liked him for this.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
It really does tie him to it, especially with the rage towards sex workers and with sexual violence. Now, he is currently incarcerated for sexual assault and facing several decades. So he's probably not going to be out anytime soon, thankfully. Now, one of the suspects that I want to talk about solely because it's just a very strange incident, a very strange person. Again, he's not on the suspect list anymore, I don't believe. No, he was taken off the suspect list. But it's a man named Ron Irwin. He was a photographer from Joplin, Missouri, which I say that because Joplin, Missouri is right over there.
Yeah, it's just we could sneeze
right
on
over
it.
there. And he was a street photographer, which I love street photography. And so it kind of like piqued my interest when I heard about him. Now, he was a suspect at first due to his close ties with the women on Central Avenue. He knew all of them, like a majority of them by name. But he became even more of a suspect when his residence was searched and they found stacks and stacks and stacks of photos of women, likely sex workers, unconscious.
Oh, dude.
Now, what I assume these were pictures of women passed out from highs, nodding off, or what have you. I personally believe that's what was going on. They could have just been sleeping, but I think he was documenting the drug use.
Boy, I don't know, because
there
I've
are
seen
people with gross kinks and stuff like that.
Yes, and that's one of them.
It could be that. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
don't know Ron Irwin personally, but I will say that police really thought that they had caught this guy. When they found those photos, they were like, this is the guy. Because again, they're only working with skeletal remains at this point.
Right.
So they went photo by photo, searching high and low for these women. And of the women that they found, all of them but one were currently alive, and the one that was deceased had died of natural causes. So it wasn't them. And they went through all of that searching, for nothing. I mean, I'm glad they looked into it. But yeah, I just thought that was a very interesting twist to the case, because I could imagine finding these photos and being like, these are them. These are our women. These are the ones that we're looking for. And it's just some guy with some weird kink or something. I don't know. Scott Lee Kimball is another suspect. He is a serial killer from Colorado who is believed to have possibly been connected to the crimes, although his killing spree was between 2003 and 2004 in Colorado. So I don't think that that's even plausible. But he is on the suspect list. Robert Howard Bruce, a.k.a. the Ether Man.
Ew.
Was a serial rapist who was convicted of hundreds of sexual assaults and one attempted murder. There's really nothing tying him to the Mesa murders other than he's pretty gross and it fits the profile, I guess, of his victim type. Now, the one lead that I lean towards the most, and the lead that most people who look into this case believe could be the perpetrator, is Lorenzo Montoya. He had been a suspect from the disappearances since 2001. Since the first person went missing, he had been a suspect.
Yeah.
And as soon as those bones were found, he was essentially the first person who came to mind for many of the investigating officers as a potential suspect. He was arrested in 1999 for a sexual assault on a sex worker, but the charges had been dropped. He was picked up again a few months later after strangling a sex worker nearly to death with only $2 in his pocket. And that was always like a major
because, if you're going in to like hire somebody, you have cash on you.
Exactly. Well, and if
you don't, that's suspicious.
If you're killing a sex worker,
you don't need money.
Well, I'm saying if you're killing a sex worker and you had money in your pocket, then maybe something happened.
Like an argument.
Yeah, exactly. Or something.
Not excusing it, but like...
But no, the $2 in his pocket...
That he went with no money is
meant that he wanted to kill her.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, absolutely. There were also several reports that he had horrifically abused his girlfriend, to which we will not go into detail at all. But he also threatened to kill her and put her body in a pit of lime so no one would find her. So this is a very, very, very violent man that we're talking about. Now, on December 17th, 2006, which is 2006, so it's like right after many of the murders stopped, right? All of the disappearances stopped in 2006, and this is the end of 2006 in December. Lorenzo Montoya was killed in an altercation with a pimp named Frederick Williams. Lorenzo had ordered the services of a 19-year-old sex worker named Sharika Hill. For her safety, a lot of sources say this was her boyfriend, and other sources say her pimp. I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. It could be both. Either way, Frederick Williams waited outside of Lorenzo's trailer to, kind of watch over her and make sure that she was safe. Apparently, Lorenzo had no idea that he was there watching, because he took Sharika inside, he assaulted her, strangled her to death, bound her with duct tape, and proceeded to carry her naked and lifeless body out of the trailer and tried to put it in his car. Now, when Frederick Williams saw her lifeless body dangling from this man's arms, he acted. He got out and immediately shot and killed Lorenzo Montoya right there in front of his car. So, yeah, that feels really good, right?
Yeah, I'm like,
that feels real fucking good. Like, yes. But also, man.
But now we'll never know.
I really think that was the guy.
I do too.
Girl, the timeline is the only one that actually matches up.
It does, but, I mean, some of the other suspects have definitely been up to some bullshit, that's for sure.
Yeah, and they should be reprimanded accordingly.
Oh, yeah.
But
I do think he was the guy, for sure. Yeah.
It's frustrating. So, I actually saw photos of the scene of inside of Lorenzo Montoya's trailer. And, I mean, part of research into true crime, looking at crime scene photos is, like, I don't know, kind of exciting. There's nothing like gory in these photos, but just kind of like looking at the room and looking at the way the environment was set up, or the way that the room looked at the time of this crime being committed. I always like to look into the photos and like kind of like examine, like, I don't know, like random things throughout their house. And one thing I noticed in the photos of the scene, there was this side table next to his bed, and next in the side table, it showed a roll of duct tape next to a paperback copy of the book A Child Called It, which I read front to cover. I think I read the entire series, I'm pretty sure, and bawled my eyes out in class every time I read it. But this book had clearly been read recently, because again, it's a paperback. So when you read a paperback, like the front cover gets kind of like crinkled and curved, and with it sitting there in the photo, you could tell that he had been reading this. And I don't know why. Maybe it's just because it's a link to my own personal childhood, reading A Child Called It after being sexually assaulted. Yeah. I felt kind of connected to the boy in the story because somebody had been through something similar. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so for it to be there in the crime scene photos, that this man was killing people and assaulting people while also reading about a child who went through it, I don't know, it just really, really gave me the creeps that it was sitting right next to the duct tape that he used on Sharika Hill. I don't know. That part just really kind of creeped me out. So along with the crime scene and the search of his trailer, they also found just a ridiculous amount of porn, like just too much porn. Whatever you think is too much porn, he had more than that. He also had video and recording equipment and a video that they confiscated. Now, this video, I initially, for some reason, thought that it would be a good idea to show the audio from it. I'm not. No, that's fucking traumatizing and terrifying, and it makes me want to throw up when I hear it. But this video that they found in his trailer was supposedly a recording of kind of like the ending moments of his interaction with a sex worker. I don't know what was on this video prior to the section of video that was released to the public, but the section that was released to the public, the view of it is, the camera's just facing the wall, so you can't see anything. It's mainly the audio that you get from it. And all you hear on the audio is duct tape. Duct tape being...
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's real scary.
It's fucking terrifying. And then after a few moments of sound of the duct tape being ripped off the roll and wrapped around what we assume is a victim, then you start to hear the sound of a trash bag.
I don't know why it's so scary, but it is.
It's terrifying because that's what he put all of Sharika Hill's belongings in, was a trash bag.
Yeah.
And as we know, none of the victims were found with their personal belongings.
Yeah.
So it's likely this is a pattern.
How he disposed of them.
Absolutely. Just terrifying. So during the investigation, they actually found tire tracks from his trailer to the burial site, which was only 3 miles away from his trailer. And he's also known to have dumped trash in a separate location on the West Mesa. Like, his girlfriend knew that there was a spot that he would take their trash and just dump in the wild. So, I don't know, with that little information, it kind of links it all together. That he has a pattern or a habit of taking personal belongings, putting it in trash bags, and dumping it at a trash site somewhere else. But again, I'm not an armchair detective, so I can't say for sure. And none of us can say for sure, sadly, because we have no DNA evidence linking him to the crimes. Some also suspect that the killer in the West Mesa murders could also be the same killer as the Long Island serial killer murders, suggesting that the perpetrator moved there to Long Island once they were done killing in Albuquerque. Whether this could have been due to, like, maybe they thought the heat was on them, or, the housing development started to kick up and they started to develop houses in the area. So maybe he thought that, or they thought that, the jig was up and they had to move locations. But the Long Island murders were believed to have been committed between 1996 and 2011. Which is a huge fucking time period.
Yeah, it really is.
So I just highly doubt that the two perpetrators are the same person, but a lot of people connect these two cases. Now, roughly 1,000 leads per year are sent into the Albuquerque Police Department every year since the discovery of the first bone in the West Mesa pit. And they have been following each lead as thoroughly as they possibly can and continue to do so because this case is active and still unsolved, though investigators believe that if the killer is still alive and out there, they have probably either stopped killing or at least stopped killing in the Albuquerque area. The West Mesa Memorial Park opened in 2020, giving family members, friends, and the community a place to grieve and hold space for the missing and murdered ones there. And because of this case, now this is something that actually was good that came from this case, an organization that does exactly what we were bitching about at the beginning of this episode. A woman named Christine Barber started an organization that was originally called Safe Sex Work, which is now called Street Safe New Mexico. Now, this is an amazing organization. It's stated on their impact statement, says that they are dedicated to protecting the health and safety of all marginalized women, especially those who must live on the streets in order to survive or have been victims of sex trafficking. They keep an active bad date list, which includes descriptions of not just the attacks,
but
suspects
and
perpetrators, what they look like, what they were wearing, descriptions of like their personality, and the vehicles that they were driving, which is all very important information. And, you know, it's really good that they have, I mean, it's obviously really good that they have this list, but it's even more important that they have this list because, like we have seen in this case and many, many others, the police just don't want to get involved. So in the cases that the police don't get involved, there's still that backup list of information, of documented information of these sexual attacks and suspicious perpetrators. And, you know, the organization is there to instill preventative measures so that way these cases are taken more seriously. And so they have that documentation in case police ever want to open it up again. They also have a location within the city called the Salon, which I think that that's really cool. It's not technically a salon, but it was a 1950s hair salon, and they opened it up as a safe place. So it's like a place where sex workers, people have been trafficked, or just people that are living on the street, they can go to the salon and they can go in and they can get, you know, a nice fresh hot cup of coffee. There's comfortable chairs and a lounge to sit. It's a safe place where you can go, you can sit, you can be comfortable in temperature controlled environment. You can get help that you need. You can have people to talk to, and you can sit and you can take a fucking breath. And honestly, that in and of itself saves lives.
For sure.
Just a simple place to feel safe. It's just beautiful. Street Safe New Mexico works closely with the community and not only provides safe sex alternatives, contraceptives, and hygiene products, they also feed and clothe those in need. And they also have a self-defense program where they provide homemade pepper spray for safety, which I just think is really badass. They also have a program called, quote, Save Your Skin, which is a program where medical students from the University of New Mexico come and teach intravenous users how to inject properly and safely to prevent abscesses. So I know that there's a lot of you listening that have never been an intravenous user. I am one of them, but who fucking cares if you haven't been there? Like, let's support people who are struggling. And
big fan of harm reduction.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to cry again. I'm trying not to, because I see a lot, like, especially on the West Coast, like in California, you'll see this a lot where you have like the clean needle banks. Mm-hmm. And there are so many, like, people will picket outside of these centers.
People need to get a real fucking hobby.
I'm just like, love your neighbor. Like, why can't you fucking do that? That's like one of the biggest rules in your religion, isn't it? Like,
well, I can't even talk about Religion Day. I'll be mad.
But, you know, like, regardless of religion, regardless of beliefs, it shouldn't matter. Love your fucking neighbor. Love one another. Like, it doesn't have to be.
Harm reduction actually ends up in the long term reducing addiction rates. So I don't know why anyone would be opposed to it, but whatever.
Because it's taxpayers' money.
Okay.
Yeah.
Your churches don't pay taxes anyway. Quit your bitching.
Exactly. If churches were taxed,
tax them.
If the tax money from the churches were spent on providing homes for those without homes,
addiction recovery programs, outreach,
health and safety programs,
I don't know, poverty elimination.
Maybe, just maybe, the crime rates would go down too.
Gosh, it's like all those things related. Weird.
So I just really wanted to give a shout out to the Street Safe New Mexico. If you live in New Mexico or the Albuquerque or surrounding areas, please, if you do anything in the next coming weeks or anytime soon, please, if you have time, they are looking for volunteers. And if you have any extra cash, they are receiving donations. They are fully donation and volunteer run. I completely endorse this community and this company, and I really want to support them as much as possible. So in the description to this episode, I will have linked their information, their website, as well as an email address that you can reach one of the heads of the company, as well as a phone number and a mailing address. So you have many options of reaching out to them. I really, really, really suggest that you do in any way possible, even if that's just taking the information and relaying it to somebody that might need it. They are saving lives. And I really, really hope that one by one communities start to implement these types of resources for people in need, because you never fucking know when that could be you. Mm-hmm. The amount of people that are unhoused that I have spoken to personally, who used to be lawyers, bankers, multimillionaires, people who had their quote unquote had their shit together. Mm-hmm. You never know when something can happen to you. We all a sneeze
away from it.
All of us. All of us. Every single one of us.
And you know what's not going to save you? Your government. No matter who you vote for. So it's time to help each other.
That's right.
So be kind.
That's right. It's time for community. It's time to band together.
That's right.
So that way we don't perpetuate cases like this. So
business time.
Girl, it's business time.
Yeah, because I got a business we're going to support today, Teabags.
That's right.
It is called Plume and Feather. It is an Etsy shop. And this girl makes some gorgeous witchy candles. She makes beautiful lip glosses. Ooh. And listen, like a lot of people would say, hey, Lillian, isn't that direct competition? No, there's no competition. We can all succeed.
There is no fucking competition. I don't understand that with people.
Dumb. So here's the deal. I'm in a lot of like handcrafted goods groups on Facebook. Same. And this girl just opened her Etsy and got her first review. And it was a 1-star because she supports Black Lives Matter.
Oh, I don't know why that gave me chills. It just makes me want to cry and be mad. That's so ridiculous.
Well, I'm not about that shit.
No.
So I'm going to have her, let's blow it up.
Yes.
Let's blow it up.
Yes, let's get her some reviews.
Look, I'm broke as a joke right now, but the minute I get a little money rolling in, I'm going to buy something from her. Yeah. I want her lip gloss. Number 1, it's packaged gorgeously. Number 2, it is beautiful.
I love
it.
Lip gloss.
It is vegan, cruelty-free. Let us go support a beautiful woman creator who is getting shit on just because she's a decent person.
Yes.
So I'm going to link her shop, and I want y'all... Everybody just, if you can, her prices are so reasonable. She's just starting out. We're all trying to make it. So let's give her some love. Go buy from a small creator. Y'all, I would love any of those things as a gift for Yule or Christmas time.
We are doing a Secret Santa on our Discord.
And
so that would be a very good...
If you want to join the Secret Santa, you have until the 10th. Join our Discord. I will link this shop. Mm-hmm. And if any of y'all buy from this shop, send me a screenshot, and I'm going to do a drawing for a free month of Patreon.
Girl.
Yeah, fuck this. Yeah. Let's get her all 5-star reviews.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have any money right now, but I might leave a review even though it's free.
You can't.
Oh, because you have to buy.
This evil person literally bought something just to leave a 1-star review on this new shop.
What a piece of garbage.
Yeah. And this stuff is beautiful. Like, no joke. It's really lovely. I wouldn't support it if it was crap. Y'all know me. So let's all blow it up. Yeah. Everybody go buy some. If you want to join our Secret Santa on Discord, join our Discord. The link is in the link tree. It is a forever invite. Just click it. It'll take you to our server. Do you need help getting on Discord? Just email me. I will help you figure it out. I will walk you through it. I am old also. I don't know what the fuck's going on.
It's confusing, but we're all confused. So
yeah. And then come into Discord. Let's give each other some little presents. Let's have a good Christmas, okay?
Yeah.
And let's support a small business.
I'm so excited.
So shout out.
I love gift giving and gift getting.
Yes. Also, we have merch. Speaking of getting some gifts, do you have a cruelty fan in the family or what? Treat yourself for Christmas. Get you a hoodie, get you a mug, get some cozy going on.
We got some really cool merch.
We do. And then, of course, we have a Patreon. I just covered Josh Duggar.
Oh, you recorded that episode pretty late, and I just ended up falling asleep, and I'm so glad I missed it. I'm so sorry.
But I also covered the history of the Learning Channel. So that was very interesting. I will be covering next and that's the tea. That's our $1 tier. It's a 15-minute case, and it is a case of consensual homicide.
Ooh.
Kind of like the Armin Mivas case, but way worse. And, well, I don't know about worse, but way weird and very disturbing. Yeah, every trigger warning on that one, friends. Yeah. So if you want to get in on all of that good stuff, head on over to our Patreon.
I might do a poll for my next Patreon case. I have like 3 or 4 that I just can't decide on.
Yeah, so exciting times. Other than that, I was going to advertise my son John's candles, but we're sold out.
Congratulations.
Again.
Yeah, good.
I'm so proud of him.
John is making some beautiful candles.
No, they're legit.
Yeah.
But it's Ozark Candle Company. I will link it. Go like his Facebook page because we'll be launching more stuff soon. He wants a nice rustic line with sophisticated scents. That's what he said.
I love that so much.
It's very cute. He's 15. I think it's adorable. Anyway, love you guys.
Yes, support small business. It is the gift-giving season.
Small this year.
Yes, please.
Look, I get it if you got kids and they want the latest whatever who's a what's it, but you got adults in your life and they don't need the whatever who's a what's it. They need small business stuff that's cute.
I'm sorry, but adults all treasure handmade
Yes,
stuff.
we do.
If not, you don't need them.
Then it's weird. I don't know. I love handmade gifts more than anything.
Absolutely.
But shop small. Do not let consumerism consume your life. Mm-hmm. It's not status. It's gross. It kills the planet. Shop small.
Yeah. And support Black and Indigenous people of color as much as humanly possible.
Absolutely. And queer folks.
Queer as fuck.
That's right. Until next time, if all you can do to support this podcast is listen, please know that I love you as creepily as you want to make it.
I love you.
Good night. Us on your social media platform of choice. Linktree/cruelty has all the links. Check out our Patreon for exclusive episodes, merch, ad-free episodes, live ghost hunts, and much more. Please be sure to subscribe. New episodes are uploaded weekly. Thank you so much. See you next time. Music and production by Libby.